So we got another video from Brit Monkey called The Myth of the 1950s. I like this guy. I like the videos. Let's check it out.
Thank you, Industrial Society, for saving us from this, sarcastically declares one internet post featuring a picturesque view of the Swiss Alps. Can you believe people used to afford a suburban home, a car, 3 kids, a holiday?
This kind of isn't true. People were struggling back then. I like some of the movies nowadays that have taken a more realistic approach to what the 1950s were like. I like seeing the movies where it's a guy living in one of those really tiny apartments that looks super hot, where everything is sort of just the kitchen, and there's this vinyl tile and then this cheap asbestos walls, and that's, I really like that image of the 1950s because I think it's a lot more honest. Now, I do think that a lot of people were able to afford homes because there were things like chemical plants and factories that were out in the suburbs that you could actually commute to and work at, but people who were living in cities had it really hard. I know because there's places around here. Let me see if I can find this real quick. So it's fine. There, I know it's on HTTPS. It's dumb. There's places in Kenna Holmes that look like that, and they're cheap still, but they're terrible. If I can find one. 30,000 here. Let's go look at this. This is probably one of them. They don't have any photos of it, do they? Oh, that sucks. But there's places around here that still look like that. And you can get them for sometimes 25, 30,000 a month, but they look just like what I was describing. These really terrible small places that look hot and sweaty. Yeah, just something like this. Exactly. This is exactly it. This is what I think a lot of people were actually living in back then. It was cheap, but I think that a lot of people were living in a place like that.
And college, all on the income of one guy. What happened to society? Asks the nostalgics. Reject modernity, embrace tradition, says the 16-year-old teenager in Missouri, posting a picture of 2 people standing in front of a power line.
Why don't men wear suits anymore? I'm going to start wearing suits to school every day, and I'm going to get bullied, and then I'm going to blame it on trauma when I'm older. Make better decisions.
Medieval peasants had more free time
Trip
and
jeans, baby. Wear the trip jeans.
holidays than people today, proclaims another, to over 117,000 likes. Hey pal, there are billions of people in the world.
There is such a meta on the internet to just make posts that just sound good and farm likes off of it. We used to have a joke in my friend group where we said that if you wanted to blow up on Twitter, all you had to do was go on there and go, hey guys, racism's wrong. And then everyone would go, like, we don't already know that.
World today who live the lives of many.
Sorry that you 16-year-olds feel like you need to disavow racism. It should be innate.
Peasants, and they clearly
Stay away from
don't
it. It's
work
bad.
fewer hours than we do. This kind of talking point is part of today's digital zeitgeist, from across a spectrum of viewpoints and age groups. And I know it's not all people. Most people know we've never had it so good.
Totally.
This video is for the folks who genuinely believe that life was better.
You don't even have to work and you can have air conditioning. Have kids. Live off welfare. Welfare is always hiring. Easy.
In the good old days. Happier. More virtuous. We didn't have as many nice things, but everything made sense. The outfits, the buildings, the social cues, people being more friendly than they used to, people being more religious, more public esteem.
What you don't see is the amount of cult-like behavior that was going on at this point in time. Being an outsider was so dangerous, and people still were outsiders.
Ultimately, they might say, we must return to tradition and a domestic, conservative way of living. And I can easily dismiss all of that as bullshit by saying, you can already do that.
Jeez.
You can go and live a pastoral farmsteading life and pretend you're a medieval peasant.
Totally.
It's not illegal.
No.
There are many people today who live as if it was the 1950s or the 1880s.
The problem is that a lot of people will say that there are no cheap plots of land anymore. Go into the backwoods of West Virginia and find a place that doesn't have running water and electricity. You can get a cheap plot of land and you can build a shack on it and you can live in that shack. But most people don't want to do that. Now, some people do. I've seen videos of people who do that and they do seem to be happy, but it's not for me. I like technology. I like iPhones. I'm not going to go out and live in the middle of nowhere. I don't think it would make me more happy to be completely disconnected from everything that I have grown up with and enjoy.
You don't have to advertise it to the world. What separates you from the Amish is that they're actually devoted.
Totally.
They actually live the life that you purport.
You don't want the choice. You don't want the choice of it. You don't want there to be an option for you because you know that you're too weak to take the easier, the better option. The better option. I get that they're happy. They can be happy. The majority of people want air conditioning.
To want. And when they get asked to explain what made this bygone era so great, it's always about what people didn't have, as if things were better because they were worse.
Video gamer mentality. Just video gamer mentality. Well, I had to walk from Ironforge to Lochmadon, and that made that game better. No, it didn't. It didn't. You think it did, but it didn't. Now, there are good things about that. I'm not saying there aren't. Everyone chill out, but classic WoW runs its course very quickly for most people. The friendships were better because we were just in a time where people were more social in video games.
What people didn't have, as if things were better because they were worse. Oh, we didn't always have smartphones, we had to talk to each other. We didn't have central heating, and we were happier for it. No, you weren't.
Lies.
Back in the 50s, less than half of British households had a bathroom, and people hated it. With one newspaper
you had to go outside.
Was
you had to heat up water in order to bath.
In
My mom grew up in a holler, and they at times had to heat up water for a bathtub before they had running hot water. And if you were the last person to take a bath, that was not good because they just used the same water the whole time. You understand that? You're bathing in the coochie juice of your younger sisters. Terrible, disgusting. They couldn't afford to get more water than that.
A civilized country was stuck with the bleak alternative of a portable bath. Most houses didn't even have an indoor toilet. It was in the shed at the bottom of the garden.
It stunk.
Many people look back on this time as a golden age of social conformity and family values, before the sexual, secular, artistic revolution ruined everything.
Y'all ever see women dress like this, and you just wonder what the thing is, like why they're doing that? Who do they see? It's always confusing to me. I feel like men have been wearing t-shirts and jeans forever. Do we need to find some kind of new role model to make us look more sexy? Is that what it is? How do men look more sexy? I haven't found any way to make this happen. If you use less clothing the way women do, you tend to not look as good. Even if you're ripped, a dude in a crop top doesn't look as good as a guy in a t-shirt with a nice fitting pair of jeans and that tight rear that he did a bunch of squats and leg presses to get. How do we look more sexy like this? Like I definitely think that that's a more sexy look than the girls in the big balloon dresses. How do we make that happen? Someone help me out in the comments.
That was important to them. Others look back on it as the high point of real proper jobs in industry, high wages,
real proper jobs,
wages, and they were unionized. Wealth disparities was at its smallest ever in history.
Unions aren't all they're cracked up to be. They're good in a lot of ways. They're bad in a lot of other ways. I've worked union jobs before. I worked at UPS. A lot of times it's just people who don't do as much work as you getting better jobs and getting better pay because they were there a day before you were.
And sometimes it isn't even political. There are countless Facebook groups full of older generations commemorating many of the banal complexities of the mid-century. Everything from rotary phones to bin men. Oh, god damn it, they made the bin men woke. However, thanks to the wonders of historical archives, we can
There's something about trash men that just appeals to me. I love seeing the guys come down the street on that big trash truck, just hanging off the side of it, jump off, grab the trash, throw it in there, jump back on the side. Kids come outside to watch trash trucks. There's something about it.
can paint an accurate picture of normal life in the 1950s, untainted by nostalgia and distortion by popular culture. Houses.
As if advertisements weren't made to portray something better than what it actually is, always.
Nobody wants to live in a pod.
Y'all ever seen that show called Mad Men?
Houses in the 1950s were less than half as big as houses of today.
Yeah.
Look at this ad for a luxury home. It's pretty average or even quite cramped by today's standards.
Totally.
And while it was certainly cheaper, don't even think about renovating it. Some houses were built with special caverns in the bathroom walls where you would simply dump all your used razors.
Yeah, this is such a thing. I saw a photo about this the other day. Someone was tearing out their wall, and there's just a bunch of used razors in the side of it because they were worried about sending a bunch of razor blades to the trash system. The trash men used to have to pull out the trash bags, and there would be a razor blade on the side, and when they're standing next to it and pulling the trash bag up, that razor blade would cut open their leg, and you have a really important vein there that would just start spraying out blood. So they just put them in the walls.
Forget about them, leaving the next person to deal with all those rusty blades.
Is that insane?
If you want to knock down that wall, I hope you have your tetanus vaccine. That's even if you could afford the luxury of your own home. The white poverty rate was double back then, and the black poverty rate, well, you can already guess. Cars. Cars at the time were death traps. Car physics were not well understood.
You were going like 40 miles an hour. Dude, just crushed. Just James Dean'd out here.
They thought if you keep adding bulk
Is he in a motorcycle wreck? I don't
to
know.
it, the car will just absorb the crash. Instead, it just transferred all the impact force into the frail meat puppets inside.
That part's not important.
Cities. Littering
The
in the
steel,
street
that's what
wasn't
matters.
seen as socially taboo until the 1970s environmentalist movement. There were no regulations on air pollution, so factories spewed out as
Smog.
much
Look at all
coal
that
and smoke dust
smog.
that it often blocked out the sun.
And this generation is still alive today. How is it that I have a bunch of health problems at the age of 30, but this generation, my grandmother is 97 years old, and she lives by herself? How is that? What?
in highly industrial towns like Pittsburgh.
Oh,
or
Pittsburgh,
in
the
London,
worst city
where
on
over
earth.
just 4 days.
Why is everyone in Pittsburgh mean? Listen, if you live in Pittsburgh and you're nice, I'm not talking about you, but every time I come to your city, if I hold a door open for someone, they give me a bad look. I had a person, I was parked on the side of the street waiting for something, and a guy rolled down his window. He had plenty of room. He was driving by me at the time. He rolled down his window just to yell at me about parking on the side of the street. And it just came to, I don't know why you guys park here. And I said, I promise you this is the first time I've ever parked here in my life. I've never even seen this street. This is my third time in Pittsburgh. And he's just, well, there's a place down the road that's actual parking lot. You could have parked there. I didn't know, dude. I'm waiting. The train station's right there. It's late. I'm just trying to pick someone up.
In December 1952, smog killed roughly 12,000 people and made 100,000 seriously ill. I will
So it
give
was
the
bad back
nostalgist
then.
one victory,
How's my
though.
grandma still
Theft
alive?
and burglary rates were incredibly
old
low
bag.
in the 1950s compared to today. Although that's because nobody had anything worth stealing.
No PS5s.
Work. The average American man worked about 300 more hours per year than today, and he didn't even get paid more for all this toil. Adjusting for inflation, the median salary in 1957 was slightly lower than it is today.
But how many jobs were there with that median salary? I know a lot of people who would kill for $54,000 per year. Sorry, it's lower. 52,000. I know a lot of people who would kill for $52,000 a year. Teachers would kill for $52,000 a year.
He isn't getting home until 7:30, and he's going straight to bed after beating his wife. The idea of a
all
gorgeous,
men beat their
stay-at-home,
wives?
submissive wife is a load of nonsense too. 1 in 3 married women still had jobs,
Yep.
which is
My
half
grandma
the
did.
rate it is today, true.
She worked as a
but
flower
it's
girl at the
certainly
hospital.
a large chunk of women.
She actually met her husband because she was working, I think, for the IRS. And he had to come in there, and he met her through that.
Women who
I
were
think.
relegated to being housewives often found it boring and unfulfilling.
I ask myself why I'm so dissatisfied. I've got my health, fine children, a lovely new home, enough
People
money.
aren't meant to sit around
My
and do
husband
nothing.
has a real future as an electronics engineer. He doesn't have any of these feelings. I wake up and there's nothing to look forward to. I've tried everything women are supposed to do. Hobbies, gardening, being very social with my neighbors. I begin to feel
This is just undiagnosed depression, first of all. And also, the idea that there's things you're supposed to do, some people are just different. I am not happy if I have to talk to my neighbors and I have to garden. I do like hobbies, but I don't want to be seen.
I have no personality. I'm somebody
is
who can
different.
be called on when you want something. But who am I? I seem to sleep so much. I don't know why I should be
Undiagnosed
so
depression.
tired. It's not the work. I just don't feel alive.
Nor was everybody pious and morally pure. As early as 1939, a minority of Britons believed in life after death, indicating that maybe people back then weren't as religious as we think. 1950s cinema gives the impression that everyone acted as upstanding, sexless, clean-mouthed citizens all
This is because of censorship of the time, not because of the way people actually acted.
the time. But that was just voluntary regulation
Yes.
by the big studios. For every grand cinema showing the latest Hollywood romance devoid of sex, there were many more seedy dive cinemas
They
showing
had to say that you had a bun in the oven. But yet they had porn movies. They had porn movies that just showed up in theaters and people would just go watch the porn movies. It was thought of as high-end cinematography.
low-budget, raunchy sexploitation movies. Soho in London was internationally famous for its adult theatres and strip clubs. Alfred Kinsey, a controversial sex researcher, found in 1953 that around half of white women and 68% of college student white men in America had engaged in premarital intercourse.
That number's definitely higher
Swearing,
now.
also pretty common.
Totally.
Here's some outtakes from old Hollywood.
But it's strange because my parents grew up in this generation, in the 60s, so right after the 50s, and obviously. And they adopted so many of these morals that their parents didn't even have. Their parents were more foul-mouthed than they are, and still to this day I can't swear in front of my mom without her clutching her pearls.
Films where the actors mess up their lines.
I have my fingerprints taken, my hand asked and married. The things has happened to... Son of a...
I am not lost.
Not even his real voice. The way he spoke immediately afterward. I had my fingerprints taken, my hand asked for in marriage, and son of a... Just immediately normal voice.
Oh, Christ, son of a bitch.
Fuck, 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 fuck. I don't know the lines.
She knows the words, though.
You know what I'm going to do for you?
I have a hunch now.
I didn't die, and I haven't stayed away, and I want that child. Well, you're not going to have it, Is that so?
And that's just the high-profile actresses who were in the workplace.
Totally.
Goodness of God,
You can imagine the kind
Lord's
of
name in vain.
foul-mouthed language used by everyday people in casual settings. Having
People just romanticize it because they like the fashion, and everything in black and white looks cool.
heard all this, the nostalgic may look back even further. If the 1950s weren't as conservative as I thought, well, the true good old days must have been the 1920s, or the 1800s, the Middle Ages. But it's
It was-
all a race to the bottom. Because
It was crazy all the time. Society has been improving ever since the beginning. And back in the day, in the 1800s, there was nothing to do, so the amount of premarital sex was actually very high. A lot of marriages came about because 16-year-olds didn't have anything to do except for get each other knocked up.
conservatives have always been talking about the good old days.
Not
In the
real.
1930s, one English newspaper reported,
There is no period in history in which young people have given such emphatic utterance to a tendency to project that which is old and wish for that which is new.
with another blaming
Parents themselves having frequently failed in their obvious duty to teach self-control.
Donald Trump's America. This is what he wants. This is the great again.
Control and discipline to their own children.
In 1939, a Gallup poll revealed...
This is the thing that I think about all the time. So if you think about the left side a lot of times, left side in politics, it's a modernist viewpoint. We want to live in the current times. And if you think about Republicans, the right side, the conservatives, they want to live in old times. But I think that the only way that we can really progress is by looking forward. And that sort of viewpoint, somebody who can see what the future could hold and then bring that to us, is the actual candidate that you want.
That 62% of Americans thought that life was better in the era of horse and buggy.
Ugh.
America
You know what
in
it
the
smelled
1890s
like?
had a standard of living comparable to modern-day Malawi, the poorest country in the world. Life expectancy
Go
at
live
the
there,
turn
then.
of the 20th century was around 52 in the US and UK.
That's 'cause everyone's
and a
children
bit
were
lower on
dying.
the continent. There are only 2 countries in the world today with a life expectancy that low: Nigeria and Chad.
People just had to have so many children because most of them would die. Even if you go back into the 50s and 60s when my grandparents were having children, they still lost one of their children.
But apparently even this was too cushy for people
Y'all ever
in
read
the
Angela's
19th century.
Ashes?
In 1832, Andrew
2
Jackson
out of 4.
proclaimed that under his leadership, the United States was
Reviving that devoted patriotism and spirit of compromise which distinguished the sages of the Revolution and the fathers
This does
of
look
our
cool,
Union.
though.
Evidently, things were better 50 years
I'd like to
ago
play a video game
in
of
the
that.
1770s, the 18th century.
Jeez.
But even in the 18th century, people complained that young noblemen who, in direct opposition to good character, hurry through life in one invariable round of debauchery, ultimately saying that, despite having attained maturity, young men are naught but emaciated. I mean, look at this guy. He's wearing stockings, a wig, makeup. He rides horses.
Superiority complex runs so rampant. You have to be so careful anytime that you think to yourself, I'm doing it right and this person's doing it wrong, because a lot of the times the issue is that you actually just have a belief in yourself that no matter what you were doing, if other people aren't doing it, they would be wrong. That you're doing it better innately because you're you. And that's dumb. If you think that, you're dumb. If you think that and you just let it go unchecked forever, that's how you become the dude who has a mid physique on Facebook at 44 years old, making $75,000, being worthless at everything except for having a mid physique and making $74,000. And then you're like, I deserve a 22-year-old woman who is college educated, cooks all of my meals for me, has a super high sex drive. That's how you become that guy. Gotta be careful. Gotta be careful.
Yay! Inevitably, Uncle Richard will ruin Christmas dinner in the 2040s by saying, life was so much better.
The American intelligence is really incredible, isn't it? I know, I'm a gold standard out here.
In the 2010s, we must return to tradition when marriage was between 2 humans, not these robosexuals indoctrinating our kids.
Clip.
We all know by now that despite its flaws, modern life is superior to anything that came before, in nearly every single way. And in that case, why do we have literally thousands of old people celebrating old butter knives, and even more young people complaining about mechanized agriculture? I think I know why. The 2 Germanys reunited 34 years ago, but those who lived in East Germany still haven't given up their nostalgia for the old communist system. A majority of East Germans agree with the statement, East Germany had more good sides than bad sides, there were some problems, but life was good there.
That's insane.
Yet at the same time, 83% of East Germans approved the transition to a market economy, and the number of East Germans saying they are satisfied with their life increased by 44 percentage points from 1990 to 2019. What gives? Well, when asked what they specifically missed about East Germany, very few respondents actually said the economic system, the communist government, or the Stasi turning every...
Just the way it felt to be younger in a place where I knew everything and didn't have to learn anything new. Come on. He's my dog. Just a place where I felt like things were better. But not at the time, because at the time I thought that my childhood was better, but now I think that was better than what this is, because I'm older now and I hurt.
Everyone into paranoid freaks spying on their neighbours. What they missed the most was the school system, the unique food, the public art, the idea that they were all working towards a common goal, even if that goal wasn't actually getting any closer. They miss how simpler everything was back then.
Totally.
East Germans enjoy the aesthetics of the past.
You could hold it all
but
in your
most
brain
of them
more.
recognize their lives are better today. I think that's at the core of this mindset from the hyper-conservatives demanding...
It's the same thing as people who play games that have now gotten older and older, like World of Warcraft or RuneScape, where people remember times before they knew everything about the game, and all they had to do to figure something out was just to go and search it. And they know that if they can go and search it, that everyone else can. And so they know that in order to capture some of the joy that they used to have, they're literally pigeonholing themselves beyond other people. And they didn't have that comparison back then. They didn't understand that those things were available to them. And so they were able to feel comfortable living a life that they enjoyed instead of feeling like they had to keep up with the people around them. That's a lot of what it is.
Return to arranged marriages, to your grandma sharing Facebook posts about phone boxes. Modern life can seem a little vegetarian, somewhat bland.
Yeah.
Everything from buildings to post boxes have been simplified, removing some of the richness from the tapestry of everyday life. When everything can be bought online and everyone can be contacted at an arm's reach, what reason do you have to go to socialise at the pub, gossip with the greengrocer, or go outside at all?
You don't have to.
When consuming media online can replace all other hobbies, what reason do you have to develop into an interesting person? Naturally, this makes people very lonely and very bitter. It's easy to look back and think people were happier and more sociable in days gone by. How we can undo this is beyond the scope of this video, so I'll leave you with an extract from the Japanese book Hagakure. The narrative follows a young warrior born into an era of peace, born decades after the last great wars between the samurai. Plagued by boredom, he yearns for a return to conflict, solely to provide purpose in his life.
Totally.
It is said that what is called the spirit of an age is something to which one cannot return. That this spirit gradually dissipates is due to the world's coming to an end. For this reason, although one would like to change today's world back to the spirit of 100 years or more ago, it cannot be done. Therefore, it is important to make the best out of every generation.
People will look back on our lives fondly, especially people who are being born now. Have you ever seen those nostalgia channels that are showing nostalgia of people playing 3DSs and Switches and being in classrooms that look like modern classrooms and watching Markiplier play Minecraft and Five Nights at Freddy's? That's the most interesting thing ever to me, because it shows me that everybody is just nostalgic for the world that they used to live in. And it's not actually that our world was better. Kids today aren't nostalgic for Super Nintendos and PlayStation 1s the way that I am. And in fact, I don't really want to spend my time going back and playing PlayStation 1 games. They're brutally difficult. They waste your time a lot. Their mechanics are clunky. The graphics are difficult to make out. I'd much rather play the Resident Evil 2 remake than the original Resident Evil 2, where you have to sit through a door opening and closing over and over again. And that makes it really, really... that makes you realize some things about the current world that we're living in, that maybe it's not so bad. I enjoy playing Retail WoW. I enjoy playing modern video games. I enjoy going out and hanging out with people at the modern library. I enjoy being with my friends and talking about things and complaining probably a little bit too much. And I think that that's what everyone's going to miss as time goes on, is just to have those opportunities to do those things. And you're going to look back fondly at everything that you had. You're going to look back fondly at those red and yellow cars that had the pedals on them. You're going to look back fondly at the books that had the wheel that you spun, just because that's what you had when you were a kid. So, just go out and enjoy life. It's a good video, obviously. Brett Monkey does a good job. Give it a like. give them a subscription.